Okay, so I'm hoping this will work because I've changed my setup a little bit. Those of you who were in the back to basics session this morning, you probably heard me going panic, panic, panic because I realised I'd done it a little wrong. Anyway, today I'm just going to throw a word at you, okay? And that word is seafaring. Seafaring. Any ideas when I say the word seafaring to you? What does it bring to mind?
But I'm not sure. As far as I know, is in Brighton always a fair.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a fair like that, like a fun fair.
A fun fair, yes,
Yeah.
that is in my mind.
Actually, that's more Blackpool than Brighton. Okay, and then Shiny's thinking of fare. Okay, as in the fare you pay to go by bus, the bus fare or the train fare for transport. That's not the kind of seafaring I'm thinking about either. Reem, we got any guesses? Seafaring? Well, seafaring just means the use of the sea for travel or transport. Okay. So if you are a seafaring person, it means you like travelling by sea. A seafaring boat, a boat that's used for transport and travel. Okay. You can be a seafaring person if you regularly travel by sea. So the Vikings were a seafaring nation, yeah, seafaring people, the Vikings. They were seafarers. Okay. Any questions? You've gone all quiet on me. Don't do that.
Okay, I think it's used a lot between Dover and Calais. The connection between England, United Kingdom, and France.
Yeah, that's a ferry.
It's a ferry.
Yeah, ferry.
But
it's a seafaring
but
ferry,
this
we
is
hope. Yeah. It can also mean to something that happens at sea. Yeah, it can mean travelling by sea, and it can mean using the sea as kind of a business. Yeah, it's a seafaring trade. And again, we've got so much vocabulary to do with the sea in British English, especially because we are a seafaring nation. Yeah. You are. I'm sorry, I don't mean to rub it in, Tram. Honestly, I think this will be the last week we'll talk about the sea and seafaring.
no problem at all. It is important. I want to know what's going on in the world. There's no need to.
This isn't going to tell you what's going on in the world. We're going to talk about some of the books that we have available to us to read about seafaring. And last week we looked at a poem. Yeah. Can you remember what the poem was called?
At the seaside, a man was singing.
No, that was a little bit before that. The poem we read together. Can you remember what it was called? We read a poem together. We did talk about We Do Like to Be Beside the Seaside, but we read a poem that's more, a little bit less fun than that one. Anybody?
Was it the man who wanted to be on a ship in the middle of the ocean?
Yeah, that's the one.
He went down to the seas? Yes, then I know it. Okay.
Yeah, can you remember what it was called?
I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Anybody? Sea fever, remember?
The sea fever.
Sea
Yes.
Fever by
I
John
can't.
Masefield. It's okay. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely seas in the sky. Okay, well, the thing is, the sea in literature is, well, it's a huge topic, and there's so many fantastic books and not so fantastic books that are things that people read about the sea. And that's normally our most adventurous tales of the sea are found in books rather than things we've lived ourselves. I mean, I've been out at sea, I've been on ferries, I've been on boats, I've been on ships, but I don't have any adventures to tell you. Maybe a bit of seasickness, maybe, to feel seasick. But you can experience adventures at sea just by reading about them. So I thought we'd read about some of the top seafaring books. Okay, so Shiny, I think. Oh no, Reem, you were the first person in the session today and the first person to say hello to me today. So would you like to start reading? I'll give you the text. Okay, there's your text.
Yes. Just a moment. I will put the yes. Give that man have tiled the seas for thousands of years. It's perhaps surprising how few great works of literature have been inspired by the seafaring life. Sailing may have promised adventure, but in reality, it was a dangerous professional that attracted only the toast. So, so, a few of few whom were equipped with a talent for writing. Their yarns remained fixed in the area tradition, and in general, writers directly their attention elsewhere. But the exceptions are majestic.
Very good, well done. Yeah, good. So, nicely read. Couple of words, but you're getting better at figuring out these longer words, how they're pronounced. Okay, so well done.
Yeah.
Just looking at the syllables and thinking, I know that word and I'll fit the other bits around it. So well done. Now the first one, the verb is to sail. To sail.
To sail.
Yeah. So the past tense, you just add ed, and it's, because it's a regular verb, sailed. Sailed, yeah. Now, of course, there's also a sail, which is the sails on the ship. If you look at the ship in front of us, okay, you can see the sails, big black sails, okay, that catch the wind. That's a sailing ship, yeah. Remember last week we talked about the tall ships? That's very similar to a tall ship. It's actually a pirate ship, but okay. So sail, and then
Sail.
sail. Yeah, that's it. Then literature.
Lit lit
Literature.
literal. Literal.
Literature. So if you look at it, okay, like this,
Yeah.
it might help you. Literature. Literature.
Yeah. Literature. Lecture.
Okay.
I must
Literature. Yeah, it's not easy.
literature.
Literature. So you got
Literature.
literature. Think about the syllables. There's 4 syllables there.
Yeah.
Literature. Try again.
Literature. Literature.
That's it. Yay! Well done. Okay, the next one, to inspire. The verb is to inspire, and of course in the past tense again, regular verb, inspired. Inspired.
Inspired.
Yeah. And the next one I want you to read on its own.
Yeah.
Yay! Well done. Good. Then reality. Reality. At the moment we're in a virtual world. So
Yeah.
it's not really a ship in front of us. So it's not really, but it's about reality. What's real? So I'm actually, in reality, I'm sitting in my office at my desk. In reality, in my virtual world, I'm lying on a deck chair. I'm lying on a sunbed, looking at a sailing ship on the beach by the sea.
Yeah.
But that's not reality. So try it.
Reality.
Yes, that's it. Now the next one, your brain read it for you, and it knows the word professional. So it read professional, but it's not professional, it's just profession. A professional is a person.
Profession.
Yeah. So a professional has a profession. The profession is their job, their work. Okay. So profession.
Yes. Profession.
That's
Profession.
it. Then the next one, it's that O-U-G-H sound. Now, the O-U-G-H sound, you have to just learn the different pronunciations, okay? And tough rhymes
Okay.
with rough. So tough, and then this is the superlative, the toughest. Toughest.
Toughest.
That's it. Toughest. Yeah, that O-U-G-H, you really have to just learn the words and how they're pronounced, because there's so many different ways of saying them, okay? But tough is like rough. Tough, rough, roughy tufty. Now the next one again, your brain looked at it and it saw remind, but it's not remind, it's remained. From to remain, to stay behind. Remained.
Remain.
That's it.
Remain.
Good. And the last one.
Directed.
That's it. To direct. Directed.
Yes.
Now if you notice that that E is pronounced, and again, pronounced or silent E at the end of these ED words, you kind of just have to get a feel for. But generally, if it's got a T, it will be voiced E. Direct, directed, directed. Okay, that's it. Good. Well done.
Directed.
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any questions? Does everybody know what a yarn is? Talks about their yarns.
Story.
Yeah, what kind of story? If it's a yarn, it's a particular kind of story. A yarn, it tends to be very adventurous. Okay. Now, of course, yarn.
When a sailor,
Oh, sorry. Yes, Trow.
I think when a sailor comes home, from a long, long journey, then he can say, or can, then that I would call it, it is a yarn.
Yarn. Careful of saying yours. Yarn.
Yes, yarn.
That's
It happened last time too.
Yeah, I
Yarn.
know. Because a yawn, as you know,
So
is...
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
It means he can tell a story, a long story that happened. It was reality on his journey.
That's right.
On the
And sailors especially are very infamous for telling yarns. Sometimes they are not that true. But the adventures he's had, yeah. Oh, and there was a monster, and I caught a fish and it was 7 foot long. Now, yarn can also be thread, but that's uncountable. Okay, so knitting yarn or cotton yarn. But in this context, a yarn is a story, an incredible story. Okay. Okay, so
what's the
Yep, shiny.
what's the Thank you. What's the concept of the exceptions or majestic?
Okay, it's saying there aren't many, when you consider how much water there is. I mean, most of the world is water, and how important sailing has been to humanity. It's saying there aren't that many books about sailing. But those books that do exist are incredible. The exceptions, as in the books that exist, are incredible. Okay? Okay, good. You're welcome. Yes, Trump, is it the same thread, yarn? Yes. Thread, yarn, it's the same. It's almost a synonym. Okay? But normally, nowadays, we tend to talk about thread as in cotton thread or nylon thread, and yarn tends to be used for knitting and weaving. But they are pretty much the same words. Okay? So, Shiny, you were the next person to come up. Now, I'm going to give you the most famous book about sailing, I think, ever written. Anybody know what it might be?
Oh, Moby Dick, maybe. Oh.
Yeah.
I thought Moby Dick would be the winner.
Very famous, yes. But this, and we'll, it's funny that, because you're going to get Moby Dick, actually, Trump. But you're going to get Shiny, this one. How would you read that, Shiny? How would you read that?
Odyssey.
Yeah, not bad. The Odyssey. The Odyssey by... And the name of the author?
Homer.
Yeah, but not Homer Simpson. Okay, so if you'd like to read that, then Shiny.
Yeah, I remember that my professor, she always said that we read it wrong, and he will give us a bad point.
Did you have to read it at school?
Yes.
Oh, you poor
yes.
things.
But I can't remember.
No, I don't blame you. I mean, it's a good yarn. It is a good yarn. Welcome back, Reem. Welcome back. Okay, so Shiny, if you'd like to read the text.
Thank you. Written in an era when the world believed in magic, and that the unmapped seas contained both marvels and monsters. The Odyssey. Oh, what's that? It's the greatest seafaring epic of all. Homer's storyteller skills are so deft that readers tend to overlook the shortcomings of his hero on the seamanship front. Not only does it take Odysseus 20 years to cover the relatively short distance between Dorrit and his beloved island of Dark Sea footnote. But during that time, he also managed to lose his entire fleet of 12 ships. When he finally arrives home, not a single one of his crew remains alive, hardly a great role model for a would-be captain.
Very good. Well done. Nicely read. So, just a couple of little points for you. First one, storytelling. So you got the word story and tell, and we can say to storytell. Yeah? It means to tell a story. So you can use it as an adjective. His storytelling skills. Okay. So try it. Storytelling. Yeah.
Storytelling.
Yes, much better. Good. And then the next one, again, you've got 3 words. Sea, man, ship. And seaman is also a word, somebody who works at sea. And the ship bit, it's almost as a suffix, okay? It has a slightly different meaning to just ship, even though you think, oh, seamanship, it must be that. But as a suffix, it just means the state or condition. Yeah, so seamanship, his ability to be a seaman. Relationship, yeah, we often have this suffix ship. Okay, so it's got nothing actually to do with ships. Don't confuse as a suffix the word ship. You've got relationship, you've got hardship, you've got worship. Okay, but it's nothing to do with the sea, even though it's with the word seamanship. It's just the ability, the state of that particular person. Okay, so try it. Chinese seamanship.
Seamanship.
Yay, good. And then I just want you to say this next one so that it doesn't sound like 20 years. It's 20 years.
20 years.
That's much better, good. Because when you said it, I was thinking about years. Oh, 20 years, that's a lot of years.
I practice it every day, but I can't make it.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Some native speakers it's called running on, okay, and they will run the 2 words together and it'll sound like 20 years. But, you know, people who come to my sessions can do better than that, because it's 20 and then you just have to do a little yeah to show that it's years. 20 years. Okay, 20 years. That's it.
20 years.
Much better.
Thank you.
Good. Well done. Any questions?
Yes, Lynn, I have a question. In fact, Mr. Hummer, he was not also a captain of a fleet? Yes, maybe I understand here something wrong. Was the Hummer just the storyteller?
No, he's a Greek author, okay? And he wrote these 2 epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, okay? And they are the cornerstones of Greek literature. So he was a Greek author. I don't know if he ever went to sea.
But I can read, he also manages to lose his entire fleet of 12 ships.
No, not Homer. No. Odysseus. Odysseus is the sailor in the story. Okay.
Okay.
So Odysseus, he's the sailor. He's the captain. And he's the one, I don't know, Shiny, did you ever point out to your teacher that he was a really crap seaman? Because as it points out here, he sets off with a fleet of ships, he loses them all, He loses the entire fleet of 12 ships and all his crew. They all die apart from him. He's not a very good...
Yeah. He survived strangely.
He survived, everybody else dies. I mean, it is Greek literature. Greek literature is full of tragedy. It's actually a lot of popular, more popular films have been made based on the Odyssey. And as often happens, it's a fantastic yarn. It really is. Not the easiest thing in the world to read as a non-native speaker, though. So... I think you can find, let's see, Easy Reader Odyssey. There must be an easy reader by now. Must be, surely. Sadly, it doesn't look like there's many easy readers of the Odyssey, but never mind. And remember, they were originally written in Greek. But if you can wade your way through it, it is a good story. So, Traum.
Okay.
You're next, and you are going to get the second one you mentioned. Welcome back, Reem. And what was the other really famous book about the sea? You mentioned it earlier, Traum.
Moby Dick.
Yeah, Moby Dick. Another book I've had to read at school by Herman Melville. Now, I went to school at a time when you had to read the whole book. The awful thing now, especially in British schools in the UK, is quite often they don't read the whole book anymore. They just read excerpts in order to pass exams. But it is a fantastic book, but again, quite heavy going. If you'd like to read about it, Traum.
Yes. Okay. Melville's masterpiece tells the tale of Captain Ahab and his obsessive quest for a whale whose terrifying whiteness comes to embody evil itself. I doubt that any contemporary publisher would take on such a vast, eccentric, anarchic work if it crossed their desk today. Reading it, you realize what a free and wide-ranging genre the novel once was, and how much has been wrecked by a book industry catering to the most conventional taste. Not only does Melville forget all about his main character, Ismail, for hundreds of pages, but he also allows himself to indulge in endless speculations about the nature of whales, before reaching the conclusion that they are not mammals, but fish. What to do in the presence of such artistic nerve? But salute.
Very good. Well done. Well done. Only 2 words. The first one, I think you just misread it. It's quest, not guest. His quest.
Okay.
Okay. If you have an obsessive guest, it means you've got somebody staying with you who's obsessive. If you have an obsessive quest, it means you're trying desperately to achieve something. My obsessive quest to help people learn English.
Yes, I know, Lynn. Then I say quest.
That's it, with a Q. Quest. Okay, this is my quest to follow that star, no matter how hopeless. Okay, so, and then the other word, genre.
Oh. Genre.
Genre, yes, we've borrowed it from the French. The genre. Can you think of
Genre.
can you think of a genre of Literature. Can you think of a genre of literature? Any of you?
Romantic,
Yes. Romance.
romance, crimes.
Yeah. Crime literature. That's a genre. Well done. Yes.
Is a book for children. Is this also? Can you also take?
Not really, because that's another branch of literature. Because children books also have genre. Tends to be less about romance, but it could be about adventure or science or any genre.
Witches.
Yeah, exactly. Wizards and Harry Potter is a genre, fantasy genre. Okay, so literature can be split into different branches. So children's literature, adult literature, and then those branches can have different genres. Okay?
Genre. Okay.
Good. Any questions about the text? Do you agree that it might not be that it might not be published today? Because of course, when somebody writes a book, they have to get it published. And there's this guy, the guy who wrote this, Carsten Jensen, wrote this article, and he's saying probably wouldn't be published today. I think he's got a point that a book like Moby Dick, it wouldn't be published in the form it is now. The publisher, the editor would say, oh no, you've got to get rid of this bit, and this makes no sense, and where's the hero? And no, you can't say that whales are fish, they're mammals.
Yes, we talked about this, Lynn.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm afraid literature has been, what I'd say, dumbed down a lot. But maybe Herman Melville would be able to self-publish on the internet. Have any of you read the book or seen the film?
Yes, I saw the film, but it was an old version.
Yeah, I don't know how many versions have been made. I saw the old one with Gregory Peck, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a fantastic film, but it does show its age now. I think there's 2010, a modern adaptation has been made. I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen the TV series either. But I did see the Gregory Peck, not when it was made. It was shown on television. Honest, I'm not that old.
Yeah. And I hope that those kinds of books don't disappear from the bookshelves. It would be a pity.
It would be a huge pity, yes. Okay, so, and if there are no more questions, or if there are no questions, then Reem, have you got voice? Can we hear you? Don't forget to unmute.
Yes.
Ah, awesome. Then
Yes.
Reem, it's your turn to read next.
Yes.
And there's a couple of tough words in here. So try to think about, don't fret about how they should be pronounced. Just do your best. Think about the syllables and what you might be able to make of the whole word. Okay? So here you go.
Yes. The narrative of the Gordon Biome of Naked by Edgar Allan Poe. This is the only novel Poe wrote, and what strong pieces of work is savoring adventure by a writer whose specialty in catastrophe of catastrophe. Here, Boyle explore its opposite, his protagonist approaching the South Pole. In encounters a vast wars of minis and shrouded monsters. The stories appropriate in complete with unsolved mysteries sucks you in like a maelstrom, but were better to be stuck than inside one of Western literature's most furiously and weird imaginations.
Well done, well done. Good job with the claustrophobia. We'll come to that in a minute. Okay, so let's have a look. The first word
Yeah.
here is Poe. Edgar Allan Poe.
Poe.
Yes,
Poe.
that's it. Edgar Allan Poe is a very famous American writer, okay? And he wrote a lot of short stories.
Strange.
Yeah, he's
Yes.
a very strange writer. He wrote a lot of short stories.
Strange.
The Monkey's Paw, yeah. Quite often horror, a little bit of horror in there. Okay. Not your favourite writer, Traum? No, with many people, but you can't deny he had a way with words. Okay, the next one, strange. Not strong, but strange.
Strange.
Yeah, like stranger,
Strange.
strange things, exactly. People are strange when you're a stranger. Okay, then the next one, you've got special and then you've got specialization. And that means when you specialise, you learn... So, for example, when you go to school, you learn lots of different subjects. But when you go to university, you specialise in a particular subject. So this word
Yes.
comes from that, to specialise verb. So it's in the past, so it's specialised. Try it.
Specialized.
Good. Now, I've got a question for all of you here. Is anybody here claustrophobic?
What?
Claustrophobic.
Yes.
Yeah, Shiny? You don't like small spaces, yeah? So claustrophobia is a fear of enclosed spaces. If you suffer from claustrophobia, you're claustrophobic. Okay? So try it, Reem. Claustrophobia.
Claustrophobia.
Again.
Claustrophobia.
Claustrophobia. Try just the word on its own, phobia, which is fear. Phobia.
Phobia.
Yeah? And then you have
Phobia.
all sorts of different... You have all sorts of different phobias, and claustrophobia is one of the most common ones. Fear of enclosed spaces. So, claustrophobia.
Claustrophobia. Claustrophobia.
Very good. Yeah. Excellent. Well done. Claustrophobia.
Claustrophobia.
Okay. Claustrophobia. Oh, awesome. Well done. Okay, the next one, let me find the text. Okay, protagonist, the protagonist.
Protagonist.
So you've got protagonist.
Protagonist.
Okay, protagonist. Protagonist.
Protagonist. Protagonist.
Nearly. Protagonist.
Protagonist.
Nearly. Yeah, I'll let you have that one.
I must.
Protagonist. Good.
Protagonist. I must learn more.
Okay, but do you know what does anybody know who the protagonist in this book was? Who was the protagonist?
It was Captain. It was I saw in Allan Poe.
No, the protagonist was Gordon Pym. The protagonist.
No. I wanted to say, I know what a protagonist is, Lynn. I thought the story Poe wrote.
Yeah, Poe wrote a story about Gordon Pym. So Gordon Pym is the protagonist. The protagonist in literature is the leading character, the hero, the heroine, the person the book is written about. And you might have one protagonist, or there might be many. Game of Thrones, there are many protagonists. Okay. The next word for Reem is monsters.
Monsters.
Yeah,
Monsters.
monster. And in the past, there were lots of monsters in the world. They used to have maps, old maps, and it would say, "Here be monsters." Yeah, sea monsters, like this guy in front of us. Here's a monster. He doesn't exist in real life, but I would consider him a monster. But he's a sea monster, so he belongs in the sea. Let me move him to the sea. And I'll have him attacking the ship, I think. And that would be the sort of yarn a sailor would tell about sea monsters, being attacked by sea monsters. Okay.
Okay. Monster.
And you've got children, Reem and Traum. You've probably had to tell children that monsters don't exist. They have monsters. They dream about monsters. They have nightmares about monsters. So you have to say it's all right. They're
Especially
not
the ones who live under the bed.
Yes, they're the or in the wardrobe. Yeah. Okay. Most of the real monsters in the world, I'm afraid, look very much like you and I, the human monsters, I'm afraid. Okay, the next word, let me just check. I've got to scroll up. Okay. Mysteries. A mystery, singular. Mysteries, plural.
Mysteries.
Yeah, so mystery you probably would recognise, but remember when it's plural and the noun ends in a Y, we get rid of the Y, we add IES. So it's just mystery, plural, mysteries. Okay.
3 mysteries. Sucks you?
Sea mysteries, yeah. And the sea is a mysterious place. Well, oceans especially. There are parts of the ocean we still don't know what's down there. We've been to the moon, and yet there are parts of the ocean we don't know what's there. They're a mystery. Now, the next one, if something sucks you in, yeah, it sucks you in. The story sucks you in. Yeah. It just means it captures you. It becomes... I don't know if you've ever read a book that sucks you in. You just start to believe everything.
Yes.
I can sometimes watch a film and it sucks me into the story. Okay. Now you can also be sucked in by somebody, but that can mean to be deceived or to be cheated by someone. So you must know that there are a lot of phishing websites out there, and you get a lot of emails that aren't true because they're trying to suck you in to send them money to deceive you. But in this context, suck you in just means the story captivates you. Okay. Now the next word is very much a nautical word. Yeah? A maelstrom. Maelstrom.
Maelstrom.
Yeah.
Maelstrom.
It's a big whirlpool. Huge whirlpool. And they do exist out at sea in the oceans. Ships are sucked down by these maelstroms. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good. And then the last one, fertile.
Fertile.
Yeah.
Fertile.
Do you know what the opposite of fertile is?
No.
Anybody? Traum, Shiny? Do you know?
Scars. Scars.
No, I'm not sure. The
Fertile.
opposite of scar
Poor.
would be unscarred.
Poor. No, that's not what I, because you told me yesterday that word.
What?
Not enough.
Scarce.
Scarce, yes.
Not scars. Scarce. If you say scars,
Yes.
I think of the plural of scar. Scarce. Not quite the opposite of fertile, but Traum's got it. Unfertile.
Poor.
Or
Unfertile.
sterile. If you're talking about reproduction, you have fertile and sterile, and you can also have fertile as in abundance, and then it would be more like yours. Exactly. If you're fertile, you can have a baby. If you're unfertile or if you're sterile, you can't have a baby. Okay. And then you can have fertile as in abundant, but in this context it's a fertile fertile imagination, which is weird, isn't it? You think, oh, what's that got to do with having babies? But it's being used as an adjective to say he'd got an imagination that could conjure up all sorts of things that you wouldn't think of, because your imagination is maybe not as fertile as his. Okay. So a fertile imagination just means a really rich imagination, a very
Lively.
yeah, thank you. A
You're
very
welcome.
lively imagination. Okay, any questions? Then, Shiny, you're going to read from about the next one. You might never have heard of this book. You might have heard of the author, but you maybe haven't heard of this book.
The Shadow Line by Joseph Conrad.
Very good. Well done. Yeah. Have you heard of it?
No?
No? Okay. Well, Joseph Conrad is very, very famous. He wrote short stories and he wrote novels. Okay. And he was actually a Polish-British writer. And he was a sailor. He was a British, what they call Marine, but not like American Marines. He was a merchant mariner. He was what they call a merchant marine. Okay. And he was a prolific writer. He's written many books. Most of his most famous work, I think, is The Secret Agent. That's been made into a very good TV series recently, actually, The Secret Agent. But quite depressing books, I have to say. But if you ever want to read a book set in London in the past, The Secret Agent I would actually recommend, but it doesn't end happily, I warn you. Okay. Okay, Shiny, whenever you're ready, if you'd like to read.
The Polish-born Conrad stepped into world literature more or less from nowhere, despite English not being his native tongue. His writing is the most sophisticated I've ever come across. Of his many extraordinary novels, this classic rite of passage story remains my favorite. When the ship of a young, untested captain is becalmed, he's faced with his first big challenge, and despite odds, rises to it. For Conrad, the deck was a microcosm of the wider world. His novels are all about ethics and honor. Those were the days.
Very good. Well done. Well done. Just the one word with the pronunciation, I would say, which is faced. To face somebody.
Faced.
That's it. You just got to get that long A. Okay, faced. Yeah. When you're faced with difficulty, when you come across something like that, yeah, it just means to be confronted by it. Okay, very good. And then just the end. No, your pronunciation was spot on, but that particular phrase is a sort of wistful phrase. And you'd say it with a bit of a sigh. Okay, as in those days don't exist anymore. So we tend to say, those were the days. Try it. Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Yeah. Can you remember when you could buy a whole box of chocolates for 10p? Ah, those were the days. So whenever you're thinking about something in a positive way that you miss, yeah, that you really would, they were just wonderful, it was wonderful, then you would say, oh yeah, those were the days. Any questions? Yeah, like the good old, not old good days. We'd always say the good old days. The good old, the good old days. Something that people tend to be trapped by, always thinking that in the past things were better than they are now. But we forget all the rubbish from the past and we just tend to think of the good stuff. But yeah, that's the similar sort of thing you'd say, Shiny. Yes, well done. Traum, you were saying?
The last part of the text. Mm-hmm. Untested captain is becalmed.
Becalmed. Calm is a silent L. Okay. So calm.
Becalmed.
Mm-hmm. Well, remember when just look at the ship in front of us. Okay. And I think you came to the sessions, Traum, where we were doing the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Can you remember? In Second Life, we did the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.
I think so.
And they were stuck, remember, because there was no wind.
Yeah.
In the past,
yes.
These sailing ships were reliant on the wind, and if there was no wind and there was no waves and they weren't in a current, they weren't going anywhere. They were stuck. They were what they call becalmed.
Okay.
So it's a very negative thing. A sailor doesn't want to be becalmed because, you know, you've only got so much water on board, you've only got so much food on board, and so if you don't have the necessary wind to move it, it could be very, very dangerous. Okay. So obviously in this story, I haven't read this book. I've read a lot of Joseph Conrad, but I've read Lord Jim as well, but I haven't read this. I might read it actually, it sounds good. But, oh, Shiny's crashed. But if you're becalmed, it means there's no wind in your sails. You're stuck. Okay?
Okay.
Good. Okay. Then the last bit for today, and it's your part, Traum, if there are no more questions. Oh, welcome back, Shiny. Okay, so the last bit for you, Traum, is this text, okay?
A footnote to history by Robert Louis Stevenson. This short journalistic report, which Stevenson wrote during his final stay in Samoa, provides great insight into Samoan culture, along with a wonderfully ironic dissection of the follies of imperialism. Three colonial powers, Great Britain, the US and Germany, prepare to pitch into battle over the spoils of Samoa when a hurricane strikes and wrecks their men of war. Stephen could have called it the revenge of the South Seas.
Very good. Well done. Nicely read. So it's not a long book, okay, but it's more of a historical record, okay, and we've got here the colonial powers, okay, Great Britain, the US, and it's basically America and Germany. In the past, they were called, you know, imperialism, colonialism, the idea that you could inflict your culture upon other cultures, etc. So we're still accused of it today. Just because I teach British English, people accuse me of colonialism, and I'm like, I don't care if you want to speak American English, but I just happen to know British English. Okay, so just two words for you. The first one is a great example of why you've got to get that t, not the d. Okay, inside, as in the opposite of outside. Insight. Insight.
Insight,
Yeah,
not inside.
That's it. Okay, now I don't think there's not a direct opposite of insight. Okay, because insight is the ability to understand things, and if you have insight, you have a very good idea of being. I guess the opposite of insight would be lack of understanding. No, unfortunately not that easy. I'm sorry, Traum. Maybe lack of insight would be the opposite of insight. Lack of insight, the inability to look, to see into things, to perceive things. Not so easy though, and not to be confused with incite, which is to incite, like to incite a riot. Okay, insight, but to incite means to encourage people to do something negative, to incite a riot, to incite a crime. Okay. So don't confuse those two. Okay. And then the other word, let me see. Yeah, Kim, ignorance. Yeah, but ignorance is a much more broad it's a much broader brush. Ignorance of the law, ignorance of good manners, ignorance of, to be ignorant is, but yeah, it could be a kind of ignorance, the opposite of insight. But lack of insight is probably the way you'd say it, as a direct opposite. Okay, and the last one, hang on, I've just lost my text for you.
It has to do with imperialism.
Not impair, imperial. Imperialism.
Okay, imperialism.
Imperialism, yeah. Goes along with colonialism. The idea of empire, okay. Again, something that could be... The Brits were very imperialist. And do you all know what a man of war is? They're men of war. It wrecks their men of war.
Also, who survived the war? Or had to do with war?
No. Remember, we're talking about the sea now. We're talking about books written about the sea. What might be
is
a
it
man of war?
Does the war mean not the war as I have in a picture in my head? It's war when a great wave comes in or so, they have to fight again, bad weather, storm and thunder and so on.
War, yes,
no?
But actually in this context, the clue is the word to wreck. To wreck. Think about shipwreck. A man of war is a kind of ship, a sailing ship that was built for war. Okay. So in front of us, the ship being attacked by the sea monster is a man of war. It's got cannons all along the side. Yeah, it's a sailing ship, and it's armed. It's a man of war. It's not a ship that's been built to explore. It's a ship that's been built to fight. And if you look down the side of the ship, you'll see the cannons pointing at us. Don't worry, they're not armed. But that's a man of war. Okay. So basically their ships, their armed ships, were all wrecked. Now, if you want to look at, if you're interested in this kind of vocabulary, yeah, literally a man of war is a kind of ship. A ship that's with sails, but with lots and lots of cannon. It's also the name of a particular kind of jellyfish. But of course, words always have to be taken in context. In this context, it's saying that their ships were wrecked. And if you're interested in ship vocabulary, there is so much vocabulary to do with these tall ships. And this is the anatomy of a man of war. I wouldn't bother learning all of it unless you intend to go sailing, to be honest. Okay, so we'll carry on reading the text next week, if that's okay with you guys. I hope you've enjoyed the session. Yeah, it's a kind of jellyfish, yeah. But I think that's where the term for the man of war jellyfish came from, these galleons, these sailing ships that were built for fighting. And I think it's quite a dangerous jellyfish, so that's why they called it a man of war. And it's also got these funny appendages on it that look like sails. If you look at the jellyfish, I hate jellyfish, by the way. I saw huge ones on holiday, huge, just by a nuclear power station. I think they were mutants. But yeah, the man of war jellyfish, as opposed to the ship. But in the context of this text, of course, yeah, it's the big sail, I think. That's why they called it a man of war. Here he is. Here's a little... Oh, no, they don't like hot linking there. Let's see if I can find another one. Yeah, here you go. Here's a Portuguese man of war. Okay, thanks, Kim. Well, you're welcome anytime. You can come and read with us or just to listen. It's fine. These sessions are open to anybody, so come back again sometime. And we'll be carrying on reading about these books next week, okay? A beautiful looking creature until you realise it's got all those stings and poison sacs and things. I don't like them. Okay, Traum, bye. Take care. And bye to you, Reem and Shiny. Thanks for coming. Thanks for taking part. And I'll see you next week. I'm going to leave you with a little song that you don't have to watch. You don't have to listen to if you don't want to. This is a really famous song called "Those Were the Days." Okay, which links into our earlier bit of text. Those were the days. Okay, take care then. Bye. Bye, Kim. Feel free to explore, wander around, but I do have to go. I'm so sorry. I don't want to be rude, but I have to fly. Not literally, but metaphorically. Bye. Bye, Reem.
Yes. Give that man have tiled the seas for thousands of years. It's perhaps surprising how few great works of uh, literature have been inspired by the seafaring life. Sailing maybe may have promised adventure, but in reality, it was a dangerous professional that attracted only the toast. The, to, to, toast. A few of few a few of whom were equipped with a talent for writing. Their yarns remain fixed in the Oria tradition.
The Sea Fever.
Sea
Yes,
Fever by
I
John
can't.
Masefield. It's okay. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely seas in the sky. Okay, well, the thing is, the sea in literature is, well, it's a huge topic, and there's so many fantastic books and not so fantastic books that are things that people read about the sea. And that's normally our most adventurous tales of the sea are found in books rather than things we've lived ourselves. I mean, I've been out at sea, I've been on ferries, I've been on boats, I've been on ships, but I don't have any adventures to tell you. Maybe a bit of seasickness, maybe, to feel seasick. But you can experience adventures at sea just by reading about them. So I thought we'd read about some of the top seafaring books. Okay. Okay, so Shiny, I think. Oh no, Reem, you were the first person in the session today and the first person to say hello to me today. So would you like to start reading? I'll give you the text. Okay, there's your text.
Yes. Just a moment. I will put the
You are. I'm sorry, I don't mean to rub it in, Tram. Honestly, I think this will be the last week we'll talk about the sea and seafaring.
No problem, no problem at all. It is important. I want to know what's going on in the world. No,
well,
there's no need to.
This isn't going to tell you what's going on in the world. We're going to talk about some of the books that we have available to us to read about seafaring. And last week we looked at a poem. Yeah. Can you remember what the poem was called?
At the seaside, a man was singing.
No, that was a little bit before that. The poem we read together. Can you remember what it was called? We read a poem together. We did talk about We Do Like to Be Beside the Seaside, but we read a poem that's more, well, a little bit less fun than that one. Anybody?
Was it the man who wanted to be on a ship in the middle of the ocean?
Yeah, that's the
He
one.
went down to the seas? Yes, then I know it. Okay.
Yeah, can you remember what it was called?
I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Anybody? Sea fever, remember? Person, it means you like travelling by sea. A seafaring boat, a boat that's used for transport and travel. Okay. You can be a seafaring person if you regularly travel by sea. So the Vikings were a seafaring nation, yeah, seafaring people, the Vikings. They were seafarers. Okay. Any questions? You've gone all quiet on me. Don't do that.
Okay, I think it's used a lot between Dover and Calais. The connection between England, United Kingdom, and France.
Yeah, that's a ferry.
It's a ferry.
Yeah, ferry.
But
it's a seafaring ferry, we hope. Yeah. It can also mean to something that happens at sea. Yeah, it can mean travelling by sea, and it can mean using the sea as kind of a business. Yeah, it's a seafaring trade. And again, we've got so much vocabulary to do with the sea in British English, especially because we are a seafaring nation. Yeah. Okay, so I'm hoping this will work because I've changed my setup a little bit. Those of you who were in the Back to Basics session this morning, you probably heard me going panic, panic, panic because I realised I'd done it a little wrong. Anyway, today I'm just going to throw a word at you, okay? And that word is seafaring. Seafaring. Any ideas when I say the word seafaring to you? What does it bring to mind?
But I'm not sure. As far as I know, is in Brighton always a fair.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a fair like that, like a fun fair.
A fun fair, yes, yeah. That is in my mind.
Actually, that's more Blackpool than Brighton. Okay, and then Shiny's thinking of fare. Okay, as in the fare you pay to go by bus, the bus fare or the train fare for transport. That's not the kind of seafaring I'm thinking about either. Reem, we got any guesses? Seafaring? Well, seafaring just means the use of the sea for travel or transport. Okay. So if you are a seafarer